All right, let's first talk about Donald Trump saying he wants to end birthright citizenship. Watch
As part of
this.
my plan to secure the border on day one of my new term in office, I will sign an executive order making clear to federal agencies that under the correct interpretation of the law, going forward, the future children of illegal aliens will not receive automatic U.S. citizenship. It's things like this that bring millions of people to our country, and they enter our country illegally.
Okay. I don't know if he has the power. This is actually, I looked this up. This is not legally
It's an
tested.
amendment.
So they're
If I'm not mistaken,
right.
it's an amendment.
That's what, well, whether or not a US president can unilaterally end birthright citizenship hasn't been legally tested. So there is a possibility. And I bet he's getting some advice from legal scholars who are saying you probably could do as an executive order and then it would be challenged in the courts and we'll see what the courts say. But
Right.
what people normally think is that this would require a constitutional amendment because the 14th Amendment is the birthright citizenship. It says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. So the phrase, though, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, has been interpreted to include nearly everyone born in the U.S. except children of foreign diplomats or certain other narrow categories. So there is a possibility this could get challenged in court, where the idea is if you are in the country illegally, then your children would not have the birthright citizenship protection that because it would be that interpretation because you're not there legally. So it would be sort of like fall into the category of the foreign diplomats, or, it would kind of become this other narrow category. So what do you think? I mean, there's a lot of people, by the way, who enter the country legally and have children in the country. There's a lot of Russians and Turks and Chinese who do this. They're rich. They fly in. They spend a couple of months in the United States totally legally. They have their babies in the United States, and their babies now have birthright citizenship. And this would not, if you carve it out and it's just the illegals that don't get it, you're not actually stopping those who give this this sort of citizenship, this kind of wealthy citizenship. So what do you think of this, Jamal?
I think Trump thinks he's a king. I legit think Trump thinks he's a king and doesn't necessarily want to go through Congress for this stuff. Look, if you have the power to do it, okay, God bless. If you're going through the legal system, meaning if you are going through Congress in order to pass something that requires an amendment, okay, fair enough. Everybody shut up, right? You won the election. You clearly had enough power in order to do it. The American public agreed with you to do it. God bless. Doing this as a constitutional amendment, I think what Trump knows is that the Supreme Court has 5, 4, 5, 6, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, no, 5, 3, 8. I'm looking for 9. Jesus Christ, doing math on the air is not necessarily a good thing.
There's 6 conservatives and 3 liberals.
That's what I thought. Okay. Meaning the Supreme Court may give them a pass on this because this will go to the courts. There's no way.
But you have to.
There's no way this will get challenged.
But the conservatives are not conservative in the traditional sense of not in the colloquial sense of conservative. They are traditional conservatives. So that's different in that they don't like change to the Constitution. They are interpreting the Constitution as is, and they don't liberally interpret it. So they might
roll the dice. I think he's looking at it as, this is something I promise. I'm going to roll the dice, see what the court does, and worst come to worst. Look, I gave my best. I did what I said I was going to do. These horrible Democrats or this court undid it. I think it's going to be that, if anything else, meaning it doesn't hurt him politically to do it one way or the other. His base is going to back him. The Republican Party is going to back him, and he's going to roll the dice, see what the court does. I don't know if I like or dislike this. Oh, no, I'm saying that poorly. I don't know if I have any feelings about this, if that makes sense. I guess my main take is I don't like the president pretending as if he's a king. And I get the Supreme Court basically gave him godhood status in regards to saying he doesn't, free from prosecution. I don't like stuff like this, though. The reality of it is there are some things in this country that requires a legal process. That legal process meaning going through Congress. And I would argue this is one of them. What do you follow
Yeah,
on this? I'm curious on what your take on this. I don't have a strong point of view short of the president is not a king. Full stop. He's under law for a reason.
right. For one, this doesn't solve the problem really with the border crisis. So the border crisis is mostly young men coming in. They're not coming in, there's not women coming in, like pregnant women trying to have a baby in the United States. You're not seeing very many women come through the border. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of men come through. So if the men are going to have babies, if undocumented if illegals are coming through and these men, and then they impregnate women in the United States, well, these women are probably Americans, or legally here. And so their babies are legal. And so this doesn't actually solve the immigration issue where it's all these young men coming in through the border. So that doesn't actually, women are the ones that you're targeting women with this, not men. The other thing is that this doesn't solve the question of who deserves citizenship in the United States. And I agree that we need to modify it because I don't like, and I've known quite a few people here in Los Angeles who have this sort of golden ticket citizenship to the United States where they're from like Turkey. I know a lot of Turks like this who are from Turkey, born and raised in Turkey. Raised in Turkey to Turkish parents, but their rich parents came over here, stayed with family for a couple of months, had kids just to give them American citizenship, took them back to Turkey, raised them in Turkey, and then they were able to come back for college. And, as American citizens, they were able to, but they don't love America. They're not invested in America. They come here, they get college tuition on a citizenship rate, not the international student rate. They get it on the local rate. They then go back to their own countries and they live life in Turkey. I know several people who've done this. Same thing with there's some wealthy Russians who've done this. There's some wealthy Chinese who've done this. And if you're going to be, to me, a citizen of this country, somebody who's here wanting to build this country. So I also don't want the guy crossing the border from South America just looking to make a bunch of money to ship back to his home country. I don't like that either. I want people here who are going to build this country. And I think that those people who are here to build this country, who have allegiance to this country, who love this country, deserve that citizenship.
No,
so
that's a good point. That's a very good point.
How we figure out who those people are, to me, maybe we could have a different citizenship setup that has that, Germany, for example, there's a lot of European countries that have this sort of like, just being born in our country doesn't automatically grant you citizenship. You have to be born in the country and have spent a particular number of years of your life. Like they give them, like babies, they'll give them sort of a temporary citizenship status that's good until they're like 7 years old. But unless they've lived in the country until they're 7, then they don't qualify for the permanent citizenship, like something like that. That's not the exact rule, but it's something along those lines. So
you're absolutely right. That's not the motivating factor for people to come over here to drop off babies. Their motivating factor is to work. Like, if they're going to Texas or Florida or wherever these other border states, Arizona, they're doing so because they believe I can make enough money to send back home. I may even leave off of certain time periods. Meaning, I don't think I would have an issue if it was one of those things where we had a visa where the person could come in to work, especially certain jobs. But again, that's going to be an argument that Trump makes of like, no, we want Americans to do those jobs. People need to increase their wages in order to cover those costs, et cetera, et cetera. No, I agree with you on this. I think you're right. It doesn't solve the issue. I mean, you don't get 200,000 women at the border, if that makes sense, right? You're getting people who are sending their kids. You're getting men who are coming to the border. You're getting that because they want labor. It has more to do with work than anything else. There are other countries that are just not in a good condition to keep those people in. So no, I agree with you on this. It doesn't
solve the problem.
He's doing this purely because for his base. This is red meat for his base, right?
It sounds good, right? It sounds good to people. They feel like, oh, he's doing something about these illegals coming in. And it's like, but this isn't, so you're going to target women illegals that come in. Like, where are they? When we see the videos of the migrants crossing, it's, we're seeing a bunch of young military age men. They say it's all these young military age men coming through the border. Okay, well, they're not pregnant. At least, I suppose there might be one or two in today's world.
You're right. I was thinking the same thing, a transgender woman coming in and dropping off of it. Yeah, maybe. I'm very skeptical of that, though.
Maybe.
I'm super.
Right.
I would be shocked if it was even one that pulled that off. Fair enough.
Yeah.
And I've had a judge on. I can't think of the guy's name, but he was a judge, an immigration judge, and I got to be honest, I was shocked at how many issues associated with our immigration system. Like the idea, like our immigration system, for one, we don't have enough judges. Two, what Biden was doing with that app wasn't even legal. Like that was something that the administration just kind of came up with to get from point A to point B in order to give the appearance as if it was going down. And he makes this point that you could be in the country for like 7 to 9 years while you wait for some decision to be made on whether or not you're going to be allowed to stay in, let's say for like asylum or something like that. Okay, in that time for somebody could get married, somebody could have kids, somebody could have a job, somebody have relationships, and then 9 years later, that's assuming they even know where you are at that point.
Yeah.
Hey, you didn't get approved, you need to go back to wherever you came from. Like it is so screwed up. And both political parties have used it as a football for so many years that it made more sense not to solve it than it would be to actually solve the issue.
And I do want to say also that I do think that the attack on migrants is, all I could say is I have never, my family comes from Vietnam. They're Vietnamese refugees. I am in my mid 40s. I have never in my whole life been told to go back where I came from, but I'm recently now starting to hear that. Very recently.
Are you?
Yeah,
Well,
people are just making comments.
Made it such an issue. Yeah.
Right. Well, it's always been, I think immigration's always been an issue for both sides, always, but it's like the sentiment is more vitriol, I would say, with the voting population. Like we're just an average person on Twitter or something will make a comment to me like, oh, well, I'm not going to, I'm going to listen to this person over here and not some, baby of a migrant, Vietnamese migrant or Vietnamese refugee, whatever, like just little, comments that I've never heard my entire life, like ever. So,
but if you have a president that spends his entire election screaming that illegals are emptying their jails, they're coming into the country, they're sending they're mentally ill, and they're just criminals, and they're just gang members, etc. And he spends the entire campaign doing that. Okay, well, yeah, you may radicalize some of the people in the population that up to this point didn't entirely care that much about the issue. I mean, I remember when I was talking to Malik, and I was like, now, if you remember when Donald Trump nearly got killed, and he comes back, and he's supposed to be calmer, he's supposed to be, more conciliatory, and he comes back, and he gives first 15 minutes of that speech, no issue. And then he goes for like a 40-minute rant about immigrants. And I remember telling Malik, I was like, what the hell is this? I was like, he couldn't even do one speech without going to this. Like, it's not like people thought, oh, well, Donald Trump is soft on immigration. Who thought that Donald Trump was soft on immigration? And yet he hit it over and over and over with like an anvil in order to make the point home that I am the guy that hates immigrants. I am that guy. Yeah. That is the guy who I am. And so, yeah, you can radicalize a population if you're continuously hitting that issue that hard over and over and over again over the course of your election. I think it's also
the idea of this like white replacement, this which right, but I do, but there is a legitimate concern there. I'm not, there is, in my view, I understand the concern because I do think there's a legitimate shift that has happened in the demographics that are freaking people out. So I understand where they're coming from. I don't think it's scary, though, for the demographics to change. The Mexican Americans, for example, who are here in America now, because they're not the ones flooding through the borders, but so the Mexican Americans have been here for a couple of generations at minimum, right? And they're like as American can be. They just like tacos every but other than that, but don't we all? But they're still like doing, they're actually, from my view, living the more American dream than a lot of the white people in America. The Mexican immigrant families are now the middle class. They're working blue collar jobs. They're buying their homes. They've got a lot of kids. They celebrate Christmas big time. They're doing the family vacations to the Grand Canyon. and to Mount Rushmore because that's what they can afford. Whereas like a lot of the white class has gone off to Europe and the Caribbean and, all these other, fancy places. And it's when you really look at the demographic shift in the behavior, though, it's a lot of those Mexican American immigrants who've come into the country who are upholding, they're the ones on the farms doing the farm labor. They're the ones that are, they're the ones in the cowboy hats. Like if you go out in the middle of, I'm from Idaho, you go out in the middle of nowhere, you're going to see the Mexican American guy wearing the cowboy hat and wearing the cowboy boots and being out there on the ranch. So it's like they've now adopted. So that's like, the culture isn't going anywhere. It's not like suddenly it's changing, even if the color of the people's skin has changed. But I do understand there's a demographic shift.
Yeah, but that's not their issue. Like their issue is not cultural. Their issue is that they think that somehow, look, some of that stuff is racist, right? And what I mean by that is this idea that, well, the IQ is going to drop if we don't have as many white people in the country. It's going to utterly collapse. And if it goes below a certain amount, the country is going to implode and become more like Mexico or something like that. That's the way I often hear them talk about that. Not necessarily just in, oh, there are less white people. Because I don't hear black people making this argument. I only ever really heard whites make this argument. That somehow there's going to be some kind of brain drain, some kind of IQ drop in the country if you have a situation where there are less whites in the country itself. I mean, no, I don't buy that premise. I mean, like the people who I've known who are immigrants that were in my schools were some of the smartest in the school, like the Africans or the God, man, I remember this other guy had like a 4-point something average that was in my high school. And I know that's anecdotal, but it is like I don't buy their premise. I put it that way.
Yeah.
Even though I do get it that on a gut level, you're like, whoa, there are less of me. I'm dying out. That type of thought process that comes in. And it's identified associated with race as opposed to associated with just being an American. I mean, we're a country of immigrants. I mean, for God's sake, we're from somewhere.
I mean, and it's not, genetics can't help it. I mean, the darker is more dominant, when you're breeding with people. My family on my white side, a lot of blonde, blue-eyed. My brother and sister, who we have different moms, they're blonde and blue-eyed. But my dad had a baby with a Vietnamese woman, and here I am. Now I'm darker haired, darker eyed, and that's just the way it is. It's even though my dad has blue eyes,
It's just kind of what it is. Yeah. Unless you say we're bringing back interracial, preventing interracial marriage and all that stuff going back to the 60s. That ship has sailed.
Right. But, I do understand the desire to preserve a breed, breed preservation. I get it.
Yeah. I mean, from the standpoint of humanity, oftentimes we group ourselves into groups. Even when we have wars, those wars are done typically by groups. Hell, even with gangs, those gang fights are done by groups. So I get it, right? It's like these people are like me. These are the people I'm going to identify with most. We're going to have a similar value set. Totally get it. But this country isn't necessarily based on groups in that sense. I mean, unfortunately it is, because we do have the racial dynamic associated with the way we interact. We're Americans. From my point of view, like if anything happened to, I don't know, New Mexico, I'm not going to say, well, many of those people are of a different demographic than myself, so screw New Mexico. I just think they're Americans. I get it. There's a human element that's built into that.
The holidays are here, which also means it's sick season. Sinus infections, strep throat, upper respiratory, hacking. Everyone is traveling and passing it all around. But guess what? You don't have to deal with it this year. Why? Because this little blue case is your mobile urgent care. It has antiparasitics, antibiotics, a Z-Pack, and 6 other prescription medications at your fingertips. Thanks to the wellness company's medical emergency kit, you can tackle anything severe your body comes across without ruining your holiday plans and winding up in urgent care. This kit cuts through the red tape by allowing you to take control of your health versus being reactive and inconvenienced during precious family time. You don't need a gatekeeper because their medical board created a guidebook that outlines the common treatments for UTIs, strep throat, bacterial infections, respiratory illnesses, and more. All it takes is filling out a digital intake form, and your kit arrives at your door in 1 to 2 weeks. I have mine. It's awesome. I've already used mine a couple of times. It really is super convenient. Just go to twc.health/Kim and use code Kim to save $45 off plus get free shipping right now. This is for USA residents only. Thank you so much for watching. This was just a clip from the longer, larger show that you can catch Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. That'll route you to the platform where you need to be in order to get the full uncensored show every Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Click on that link, watch the full interview. See you there.